Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to unpack some fascinating source material for you. And today, well, we're tackling one of those really enduring mysteries, the Tasmanian tiger.
Ah, yes, the thylacine.
Exactly. This striped, wolf-sized marsupial predator declared extinct back in 1936, but the legend, it hangs around, doesn't it?
It really does. For decades, people, especially in Australia, have reported seeing them. It keeps this powerful, well, dream alive.
And that dream really caught fire again recently, around 2025.
It absolutely did. We saw this flurry of new claimed sightings, new evidence popping up, and it just reignited that whole debate.
Yeah.
Could they still be out there?
So that's our mission for this deep dive, right? To give you a solid science-based look at it all.
Precisely. We'll go through the latest evidence critically, look at how scientists reacted, explore how all this renewed hope might play into those, de-extinction projects.
Oh, yeah, the gene editing stuff.
Exactly.
Oh.
And we'll pull in perspectives from researchers, conservationists, news outlets, the whole picture.
The goal is to help you sort fact from, well, maybe wishful thinking and understand why this animal still grabs us.
Let's get right into it then. Those sightings, the so-called evidence that got everyone talking in 2025.
Okay, yeah. You probably saw some of this online. It's more than just blurry photos, isn't it? It tells us a lot about, well, belief and how we see things.
Indeed. Probably the most famous example was those photos shared by Forrest Galante, the wildlife TV guy, in April 2024, supposedly from Tasmania.
Right, I remember those. They looked pretty convincing at first glance.
They did. You saw this sort of fox-like animal, stripes, stiff tail, that classic hunched look, even the gape. They really sparked a huge wave of hope.
But here's where it gets interesting and kind of typical for this story. The bubble burst pretty fast.
Very fast. Photo analysis almost immediately started picking up, well, red flags.
Red flags? Like what?
Things like unnatural lighting, bits of the anatomy that just didn't seem quite right under scrutiny. And sure enough, it didn't take long for investigators to figure out it was, well, a hoax.
Hoax.
Using this incredibly lifelike, posable model made by an artist known as Arcasius, the photos matched the doll perfectly.
Wow. So a deliberate fake.
Seems so.
Yeah.
And to Forrest Galante's credit, by June 2024, he publicly admitted the photos weren't real, said he regretted not spotting the issues himself.
So that whole thing became a kind of warning then.
A major cautionary tale, yeah. It just hammered home how vital it is to be rigorous, to verify things. Even people with good intentions can get fooled.
And it wasn't just those photos, was it? There were other bits of visual evidence.
No, exactly. This pattern kept repeating. There was talk about a thermal video from a hunter over in Victoria. Some people online were saying it looked extremely thylacine-like.
Thermal video sounds intriguing, but also potentially ambiguous.
Highly ambiguous. Experts looked at it and basically said, yeah, it could really be anything. Maybe a dog, maybe a wallaby. Thermal imaging isn't always clear-cut.
Right.
And that brings up a broader point wildlife specialists keep making, especially about mainland sightings. Most of the time, these purported thylacine videos, they turn out to be common animals that just look odd.
How?
Often foxes or feral dogs, maybe with mange or some other illness that changes their appearance or makes them move strangely.
Ah, okay. So sickness can mimic the supposed features.
Exactly. One expert put it quite bluntly, saying something like, most videos from the mainland are ridiculous and simply depict sick and strangely moving feral animals.
Ouch. So the bottom line on the 2025 videos.
No crisp, conclusive footage emerged. Nothing that screamed thylacine beyond a shadow of a doubt. And this applies to other things too, like some camera trap photos in Tasmania late 2024, even that big press conference thing back in 2021.
Yeah, I remember that one. It also fizzled out.
Fizzled out is a good way to put it. Expert review consistently found them to be ambiguous or just misidentified creatures. It's this recurring theme. Excitement, then scrutiny, then disappointment.
Okay, so the visual stuff is shaky. What about the physical evidence, the stuff you can actually touch and test? Hair, scat, footprints, a body, anything solid there?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? That tangible biological proof.
The smoking gun.
Precisely. And the simple answer is no. None has definitively been found in modern times.
None at all. I remember reading about some droppings found in South Australia that caused a stir.
You're right. There was buzz. People were really pinning hopes on that. But the DNA tests...
Let me guess. Not a thylacine.
Sadly, no. They belong to known species, like dogs. Same story with hair samples people have found over the years. Genetic analysis always points to other animals.
So the science is pretty clear. Extraordinary claims need extraordinary evidence.
That's the mantra. Neil Waters, who founded the Thylacine Awareness Group, he's out there searching, but he's realistic. He said, basically, we need solid DNA, hair, scat, or, sadly, a roadkill carcass before the scientific establishment will even really consider it.
And that definitive proof just hasn't materialized, despite decades of searching.
Not a single confirmed thylacine bone, not one fresh pelt found since the 1930s. Remember that huge reward offered back in 2005?
Yeah.
$3 million.
Yeah, what happened with that?
Went totally unclaimed. Nobody could produce the goods.
It's quite telling.
It is. And it's the main reason the species stays officially extinct. It's not proof it's gone, maybe, but it casts this huge shadow of doubt over every unconfirmed sighting.
Like that biologist Nick Mooney said, thousands of reports, but nobody ever gets that clear picture or finds a specimen.
Exactly. He put it very dryly. Each new claim, however heartfelt, just runs up against this massive wall of missing physical evidence.
So, okay, we've sifted through the evidence or the lack thereof. The big question then is, what does the scientific community actually make of all this? It sounds like it's not just a simple yes or no.
No, it's definitely nuanced. Overall, I'd say the reaction from scientists to the 2025 buzz was skepticism, mostly.
Skepticism, but maybe. Open-minded skepticism.
For some, yes. Zoologists, wildlife managers, they remain largely unconvinced that a viable breeding population exists. You heard Dr. Kath Temper on that video clip saying it could really be anything.
Right. They need that rigorous confirmation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so far, every piece of supposed evidence has had a more likely, more mundane explanation.
Now, you mentioned Nick Mooney earlier, the Tasmanian biologist. He spent years looking into these reports. What's his take? It sounds like he's got a really interesting perspective.
He really does. Decades investigating for Tasmania parks and wildlife. His view is what you might call nuanced skepticism, meaning he totally gets the human side of it. He acknowledges that many eyewitnesses are absolutely sincere. Sometimes they're really good naturalists giving detailed descriptions.
He respects their accounts.
Very much so. He finds it, in his words, very hard to say to those people, I don't think you saw thylacine, because, how can you know if you weren't there? But he also points out how easily human perception can be fooled. Low light, a fleeting glimpse, maybe even just that incredibly strong desire to believe you saw one.
The power of suggestion.
Right. He's even consulted psychologists about eyewitness reliability. They agree memory can be tricky, illusions happen. And despite all the searches, all the cameras out there checked by helicopter, sometimes still nothing conclusive.
So his bottom line remains.
Until someone finds a body or gets verifiable DNA, you have to treat the claims with caution. A grain of salt, as he puts it.
Still, despite that widespread skepticism, some scientists have investigated possibilities, right? Like that James Cook University survey.
Absolutely. That was back in 2017. They set up camera traps up in Queensland after getting reports from two quite credible witnesses.
And the witnesses described something unusual.
Yeah, Professor Bill Lawrence at JCU noted their descriptions, eyeshine color, body shape, behavior, didn't quite fit any known local animals. So they checked it out.
That shows a willingness to look, at least.
It really does. Dr. Sandra Abel, who led that survey, actually said she was the biggest skeptic amongst everyone, but of course, I want it to be true.
That captures the feeling perfectly. Hopeful, but scientific.
Exactly. And while they didn't find any thylacines, the fact they dedicated resources shows credible claims aren't just brush off. They get investigated properly.
And there was that statistical study, too, wasn't there, looking at historical sightings?
Yes, a really interesting one in 2023 by Professor Barry Brook at the University of Tasmania. They analyzed over 1,200 historical sighting records.
And what did their models suggest?
Their models indicated the thylacine probably survived much later than 1936. Maybe into the late 20th century, perhaps even the 1980s.
The 80s? Wow.
Yeah, and they even calculated a slim chance a few individuals might persist today. The study was seen as very rigorous, and it even gave some weight to famous later sightings, like that 1982 report by Ranger Hans Narding.
But there's always a but, isn't there?
There is. Even that rigorous study found, and I quote, no solid evidence of any breeding population beyond the 1980s. So even the best analysis points to them being, if they exist at all in 2025, incredibly rare and elusive.
Which brings us to the conservation community's view. How do they see all this?
Well, they echo the need for proof, of course. But they also look at the why. Why are we so obsessed with this animal?
And the answer is,
They often say it's as much about human nature as nature. Nature, a mix of folklore, definitely some guilt over its extinction, and this deep longing for, well, redemption, maybe.
it's become a symbol.
A hugely powerful symbol of biodiversity loss in Australia.
And that symbolism, it can mess with our judgment.
Nick Boney certainly thinks so. He suggests people desperately want it to be true, maybe to feel better about extinction or absolve that historical guilt, and that passion can make you see a tiger in, a blurry blob.
So what's the official stance of conservation groups and the government?
Pragmatic. Major organizations and the Tasmanian government stick to the official line, extinct until proven otherwise. They log sighting reports, sure, but they haven't funded a big official search since the early 80s.
Because resources are limited.
Exactly. Mooney is very blunt here. He says money and effort are better spent protecting living fauna that are verifiably endangered.
Real conservation is about preventing today's extinctions, not chasing ghosts. That's a powerful line.
It is. And he sees this Thylacine focus as a bit of a double-edged sword.
How so?
Well, the legend keeps public interest in wildlife high, which is good, but it might also create this dangerous idea that extinction isn't really final.
Like we can just undo it later.
Yeah. Weenie worries that focusing on maybe finding one or even reconstructing one teaches people that extinction isn't forever and we can fix everything later. He sees it as a potential distraction from urgent present-day conservation.
Which leads us perfectly into those high-tech de-extinction projects. It's almost like because we can't find one in the wild, we'll try to make one instead.
That's exactly the feeling. The lack of definitive proof seems to have created this space, this void, that these incredibly ambitious projects are trying to fill.
Like the one led by Professor Andrew Pask in Melbourne.
Yes, announced in 2022. His team at the University of Melbourne, working with Colossal Biosciences, that's a U.S. biotech firm, they aim to recreate the thylacine.
Recreate it how? Using gene editing.
Precisely. They've sequenced the thylacine genome. They've raised significant funding, around $15 million initially. The plan is, well, audacious.
Go on.
They want to engineer a thylacine embryo. They start with living cells from its closest living relative,
Which is
the fat-tailed dunnart.
a tiny mouse-like marsupial.
A mouse into a Tassie tiger.
That's the plan. Edit the dunnart's DNA, changing the relevant genes to match the thylacine sequence.
Wow, that sounds incredibly complex.
Hugely complex. But Pask's sounds optimistic. He said something like, once you've identified those differences, it's just a matter of making all of those edits.
Just a matter of famous last words.
Huh? Maybe. And the Colossal CEO added to the hype, claiming that because marsupials gestate so quickly, like 14 days, they could potentially produce a thylacine within 5 years.
Yeah.
Much faster than their mammoth project.
5 years, that seems incredibly fast for something so revolutionary.
It's a very bold claim, and it's drawn a lot of skepticism alongside the excitement.
I bet. Who are the main critics? Dr. Chris Helgen, the chief scientist at the Australian Museum, has been particularly vocal.
What's his issue?
He finds the whole concept fanciful. He famously stood over a thylacine pelt next to a tiny dunnart and basically asked, does this mouse look anything like a tiger to you?
Good point.
He compares it to trying to turn a dog into a cat or a horse into a rhino. He just doesn't think you can tweak a dunnart's genome enough to get anywhere near a thylacine. Absolutely not, I think was his quote.
And beyond the feasibility, there's the resource question again, right?
Exactly. Helgen and others raised serious concerns about misallocation of resources, spending tens of millions trying to create this charismatic zombie tiger.
When other Australian animals are actually going extinct right now.
Precisely. Critically endangered bandicoots, rodents, even the Tasmanian devils with their cancer epidemic. Is this the best use of conservation funding?
Helgen basically called it a publicity stunt.
Pretty much. He suggested it attracts funding because the thylacine is famous and beloved, not necessarily because it's the most scientifically sound or ethically pressing de-extinction target.
But the proponents, like Pask, they see the public fascination differently.
They do. They see it as a positive, a feature, not a bug. Pask argues we kind of owe it to this species to try and undo the harm we caused.
And he talks about ecological benefits too, doesn't he? Something about the Tasmanian devils.
Yeah, he suggested a restored thylacine could act as a natural control, maybe preying on sick or injured devils, potentially helping to manage that devastating facial tumor disease.
How does that idea land with other experts, like Mooney?
Nick Mooney strongly disagrees. He called that reasoning naive and a false premise.
Why?
He thinks reintroducing a major predator could actually put more stress on the already endangered devils,
Mm.
and it's unlikely to just magically solve the complex cancer epidemic.
Plus, where would they even live?
That's Mooney's other major point. Even if they succeed, which Pask himself admits is likely decades away for a viable animal, what state will the habitat be in? Climate change? Development? Will there be enough wild space left?
By the time this has happened, we'll have so many more extinctions. That's sobering thought. The real-world practicality seems very uncertain.
Very questionable, yes.
Okay, here's a fascinating hypothetical. What if, tomorrow, someone actually finds definitive proof? A living, breathing, breeding population of wild thylacines. What happens to the de-extinction projects then?
Oh, it would almost certainly derail them, and rightly so, most would argue.
Why?
Because conservation efforts would and should immediately pivot to protecting those actual living animals in their natural habitat.
Yeah.
That's always the priority over lab creations.
So Pask and Colossal would just pack up shop on the Thylacine project.
Pask himself has said his dream outcome is seeing a real one in the wild. So presumably, yes, he'd be thrilled to abandon the project if the real thing turned up.
But is it totally black and white? Could the technology still play a role?
Possibly. Some argue that if, say, only a tiny genetically bottlenecked population were found, maybe biotech could still help, perhaps to boost genetic diversity or assist breeding programs down the line.
So it's not necessarily an either.
Not absolutely, but the immediate impact of finding wild ones would be a massive shift in focus and funding towards in situ conservation.
And how do the current sightings, the 2025 buzz, affect these projects now?
It's a bit complex. On one hand, all the buzz, the viral videos, it definitely keeps the thylacine in the public eye and probably helps groups like Colossal with fundraising. It shows there's interest.
But on the other hand,
It cuts both ways. If lots of people start believing the thylacine is actually still out there, they might start questioning why we need to spend millions recreating it in a lab.
interesting point.
And it's noticeable that Colossal spokespeople tend to consistently dismiss the current sightings as mistakes or hoaxes, which aligns with the mainstream science view, but it's also, quite convenient for their narrative that de-extinction is the only hope.
Right. This all brings us back to the bigger picture. Why this enduring fascination? Even after all the debunking, why do we keep looking, keep hoping?
It's a great question. The media coverage around the 2025 sightings really reflected this mix. You had major outlets like CBS 60 Minutes doing features, juxtaposing the hopeful tiger hunters out in the bush with the high-tech scientists in the labs.
Keeping that sense of mystery alive.
Exactly. A tone of curiosity, maybe skepticism, but acknowledging, hey, unlike Nessie, this thing definitely did exist. That gives the search a kernel of plausibility.
But other outlets were more critical.
Oh, yeah. Popular science sites, news blogs like Newsweek, Yahoo News Australia, they're often much more blunt about debunking the specific evidence, quoting the analysts who identified the Galante hoax and things like that.
Even online forums, Reddit, and places like that.
Even there, amidst all the hope and speculation, you'd often find knowledgeable people patiently explaining the flaws in a photo, the more likely explanation for a blurry video. The internet really became this space for real-time debate between belief and evidence.
That science writer Sharon Hill had some interesting observations on that.
She did. She talked about the Galante incident, how social media hype gets people invested based on hope, not necessarily expertise. People start insisting obvious fakes are real.
It can't be both, she said.
Exactly. Her point was, extraordinary claims need way better evidence than fuzzy pictures and stories. And the sheer lack of concrete proof, no roadkill, no tracks, no dens, no clear photos, after all this time, strongly suggests people are just seeing something else.
So debunking is a constant part of this story.
Absolutely crucial. It's sometimes frustrating. Those 2025 hoaxes and misidentifications were picked apart by experts, sometimes even by online communities. Viral trail cam pics get shown to be wallabies at weird angles, footprints match devils or dogs.
It always comes back to misidentification being the most likely answer.
Far more likely, as one expert put it. That blurry video, millions of foxes out there versus probabilistically zero thylacines. Occam's razor usually points to the fox. It's a sobering reality check.
And what about the conspiracy theories? The idea the government is hiding them.
Zero evidence for that. It's a common trope in these kinds of mysteries, but the Tasmanian government actually releases sighting reports publicly, with permission. They even funded that big search back in '82 after the Rangers report.
But found nothing.
Found nothing conclusive. There's no cover-up. There's just an absence, a void where the thylacine used to be.
Yet, despite all that, the fascination just doesn't quit.
Not at all. It's woven into Australian folklore, isn't it? Part conservation story, part mystery, part nostalgia. Australian Geographic said its story didn't end in 1936 for the public.
And finding other extinct species gives people hope.
Definitely. When something like the night parrot was rediscovered in 2013 after being lost for decades, people naturally think maybe the thylacine could be next.
Even scientists get caught up in it. Richard Dawkins tweeting he so wants it to be true.
Right. It's this blend of rational hope it could be possible and this almost, I don't know, spiritual yearning. But scientists also want to use this fascination for good by grounding it in broader conservation lessons, reminding people this was a human-caused tragedy. Australia has a terrible record for mammal extinctions. Over 30 species gone in just a couple of centuries.
And the guilt over the thylacine fuels the search, but also the de-extinction drive.
It's a powerful motivator, yes. But experts like Helgen and Mooney warn against letting that romanticism distract us.
Distract us from saving the animals that are still here, but endangered.
Exactly. The worry is that thylacine mania, whether hunting for ghosts or building them in labs, pulls focus and resources from urgent real-world conservation for less glamorous species. The thylacine becomes a mirror, reflecting our mistakes, but also our desire to fix them.
But the hard truth is, preventing extinction is way easier than reversing it.
Far, far easier than cure or resurrection.
Okay, so wrapping this all up. Is the Tasmanian tiger truly back in 2025? Based on everything we've looked at, the answer seems to be, sadly, no.
All available evidence points that way. Until proven otherwise, the scientific consensus is that the thylacine remains extinct.
The stories and hopes that flared up were fascinating, but ultimately, each piece of evidence just didn't hold up to scrutiny. Blurry photos, ambiguous videos, they stir excitement, but they aren't proof.
No smoking gun, no live capture, no verified DNA, no crystal clear image. Wildlife biologists generally agree it likely died out late last century.
Okay.
If any are left, they're incredibly few and incredibly good at hiding.
Still, the legend itself is powerful. It keeps inspiring people, scientists included, and maybe that's not entirely a bad thing.
No, not in itself. It's a potent symbol of loss, but also maybe of restoration, of possibilities.
And these recent sightings, even unconfirmed, they did keep the conversation going, didn't they? About extinction, de-extinction, how we evaluate evidence.
Absolutely. They prompted scientific engagement from fieldwork to genetics. Even the hoaxes probably made people think more critically about what they see online. In the long run, the thylacine story might actually help conservation, maybe bolster support, push biotechnology forward for other species.
So it teaches us this weird, paradoxical lesson. Keep hoping, keep imagining, but also keep doubting, keep verifying.
That balance between wonder and skepticism, that's what drives good science, isn't it?
It really is.
So, if you happen to be wandering through the Tasmanian bush, hear a strange howl, see a striped shadow, by all means, report it. People will listen. But understand that extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence. And until that evidence appears, the thylacine remains this ghost of the wilderness. Officially extinct, but definitely forever out there in our imagination.